Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome back to Church Ops 500 here with Van Dobbins. As always, we look for opportunities to help engage in ministry, grow your churches. This podcast, as I've said, is really focused on those folks that are trying their best to run the operations. Those folks that are doing everything from changing toilet paper to making sure that first-time guests are being called, all those fun things. How do we manage those places well? How do we use the resources that we have? And always love for you all to follow on Facebook. If you've got questions from any of our previous episodes, really love being able to get in there, engage with you, answer questions. Of course, subscribing to our YouTube and our podcast, rating anywhere you view or consume the material will be a huge help to us, not just to make us feel good, but to allow us to get the word out about what we're doing. And like I said, hopefully be able to deeply encourage some folks that are fighting a battle out there in the trenches and knowing that there is a way to win beyond trial and error, beyond just sitting there by yourself in this lonely place trying to figure it out. Despite popular belief, there is a group of people out there that deeply want you to succeed, want to give resources, want to help, want to be involved in your story. So this is a chance for us to do that with the podcast. Our topic today is one that is near and dear to my heart. We're going to be looking at servant leadership and its impact on the ministry. Servant leadership and its impact on the ministry. I have an awesome guest. I've gotten to talk with her a few times. She helps to lead one of our sister churches. For anyone who doesn't know, we're most of my folks who come on, not always, but for the most part, folks that come on are a part of a larger ministry that we're a part of called Every Nation. I encourage you to check out our website, everynation.org. There's all kinds of great information in there about our churches, about our ministry, what we believe in, what we desire to see come to pass here in our nation, all around the globe. But I have none other than Kendra Parker here with me. She is the Director of Ministries and Women's Ministry Leader at Bethel Community Church in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. If you're ever out that way, I encourage you to come out on a Sunday. I've been able to visit at least once, and man, when I tell you, it feels like family. The minute you get there, there's greeting hands, there's people smiling, shaking your hands, and what you'll find out is Kendra has a big piece of making sure those things happen on a Sunday morning. She's been a member since 2006 and on staff in a lot of different positions, which I think gives us some great insight as she speaks, as she shares. She knows what it is to be the person on that bottom rung, handing out the pamphlets, talking to people, all the way up to helping to organize the overarching structure of what it looks like to lead the church operations. Roles like the children's ministry director, the operations director. Again, anybody who's been in this business for a little bit of time, we all have had multiple titles and continue just to kind of get more and more work shoved under a new title. She is definitely no different in that aspect. So a lot of depth, wisdom to share with us. And then she's been at it 18 years in it, doing the work, grinding, getting the answer. So I'm so excited for her to share with us today on servant leadership. And I buckle in. It's going to be a ride. And I fully believe that we're all going to walk away wiser and hopefully more excited, more energized about the mission that God has given us. So without further ado, Kendra, come on, bring us in. Give us your thoughts.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Pastor Van. I greatly appreciate it. It's awesome what you're doing. This podcast is so needed. Yeah. I know you and I talked before, and you mentioned how there's not really a school for this. Like there's not, I think for the majority of us, potentially, at least for me, like this has been a journey of the school of hard knocks and learning things as you go. the hard way. Yeah. So, sometimes trial by fire is the best way that we learn. So that's definitely been my story over the years. It's like, hey, Kendra, I think you could do this. And I'm like, okay. I'm kind of a yes kind of person. So I definitely appreciate what you're doing with this podcast. It's so needed. It's so needed. Those of us who are in the operations side of things, like when you say from toilet paper to making sure that a first-time guest, it's fully assimilated into the church, like I totally can relate to that. And I think there's just a handful of us crazy people that can completely relate to that.
Yes. Yes.
And if you don't know, you don't know. But if you know, you
Lord.
know. You know. So
Yes. Yeah.
I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Definitely. So we're going to jump into the topic. I think that Kendra and I have actually gotten a chance to kind of talk. And for most people who don't know how the podcast works, I really do stop and ask the folks who are coming on, hey, what do you want to speak about? Just because the topics are so vast. One of the things that true transparency, whenever we talk, it's like, so which of the thousands of topics do we want to try to cover? So really believing and allowing the Holy Spirit to lead the moment and whatever's on the person's heart for them to share, for them to talk about, and believing in faith that it will impact us, because there's really not a good topic to talk about. Anything that we are able to discuss, talk through, I think creates a just one more layer of being able to wrap our hands around, I believe, one of the most valuable pieces of ministry. I short of, man, our worship and having the word spoken, having the sermons preached, I believe this is one of the most vital pieces to securing and stabilizing our church communities and being intentional about growth. So we're going to jump into it. Kendra, what does servant leadership mean to you?
Goodness, it means so much to me. I think it's a vital, vital part of our roles as leaders. I think Jesus was definitely our best example of servant leadership. I think it's safe to say he's probably the best leader, hands down, that's ever walked on planet Earth. So
Oh,
me, it's just super important. It's, to me, if you don't have the right heart as you lead people, there's so many things that could go wrong. And to me, servant leadership is a heart posture. It's a position that we have to take to be able to lead people well. So to me, servant leadership it's a lot of different things. I think that when we look to Jesus and how he led his disciples, I think about the story of James and John and their mother, and how they had this idea of what it meant to be a leader in our Christian faith and in our Christian walk. And they mistakenly came to Jesus and said, give me position and give me influence. And Jesus said, you have no idea what you're asking. You have no idea what you're asking. So it just reminds me of that. When he was lovingly rebuking them, he pointed out to them, like, this is what the rulers of the Gentiles do. They lord it over people and they exercise authority over them. But he said it shouldn't be that way among you, among my people. It should be, if you want to be great, you have to be a servant. So, and then he proceeded to tell them that I didn't come to be served, but to serve. And so to me, it starts with just looking at the example of Christ and how did he lead? He didn't lead for people to do for him and for it to be lorded over people. He did it to serve people. So practically speaking, what that looks like for me is just a couple of bullet points that I wrote down is, number one, nothing is beneath you. You got to get in the trenches with your people. I think something that I say to the people that I have the privilege of leading is I'm never going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. And if I'm being completely honest, I struggle sometimes as a leader because I'm a doer as well. And there's this balance of, like, I can do it. And so I'll just do it for you. So I don't have to ask you to do it, because that's really, what I naturally tend to do. But God's really had to grow me in that and teach me that I have to give other people opportunities to do and to serve. But I think the heart posture there is right. I just have to also be careful in some ways. But so to me, it's nothing is beneath me. Like when you say toilet paper to the big things, like it's not beneath me to go into the bathroom in between services and wipe down the counters and to pick up the paper towel that has ripped off from the dispensers and fallen on the ground. And, you know, if there's a mess in the bathroom, or if I see a piece of trash on the floor in the lobby, you pick that up. You know, I think leaders, the servant leadership side of things is nothing is beneath me. I think we never need to forget that. Another thing is leading by example. Like it's imperative for us to lead people by example. So they have to see us do it to understand, oh, that's the way to do it. And to have the right heart. So I think that's super important.
Come on. So many great things in there. And I think I just want to jump back and just have you share a little more on a couple of them. I think when we think about that idea of I wouldn't ask someone to do something that I wouldn't do myself, really being often challenged in that. I think the nature of, as you said, Kendra, I think the nature of people who hold our position, we are doers. We got there because we kept, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll take care of it. And it's that paradigm shift. It's that shift in our mindset that has to happen in order for us to see the growth of our ministry. Because if we aren't careful, we reach the cap of our capacity. And if we haven't cultivated that heart, that mindset of being able to empower, being able to share the work. And I think the reason I mention that piece is because if we aren't careful, we can slide into the mindset of, well, once I train, I no longer have to do that or this. And if we aren't careful, our mindset begins to create separation within our leadership, within our folks, because then it becomes, well, I used to do that, but now I don't have to do that anymore. And I think continuing to hold on to that heart of I wouldn't ask my team to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, and continuing to model it, I think is one of the most powerful things that I think we can do is, hey, I no longer technically have to go in and check the bathrooms or do any of this work, but I choose to because I want my team to continue to see that it matters to me, that the details, that the work they're doing isn't above me. So when you think about that, I don't know, I'm kind of putting you on the spot. Can you think of any moments where you've seen that really play out, where you've got an opportunity to impact someone with the heart behind, hey, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I haven't done myself?
Yeah, I think I can easily equate that when I led children's ministry. I think as a children's ministry director, it's a beast. It is a beast. It is a church within the church. And there's so many pieces of the puzzle when it comes to children's ministry. So back in 2012, when Pastor Brock came and took on the lead pastor role at Bethel Murfreesboro, he and I met for coffee. I knew of him. I didn't know him. And he said, "Hey, great to meet you. I've heard that you should be the children's ministry director." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Yes, Lord, here we go." And so our church had gone through a lot of transition and a lot of hard times. And I think we were down to like 40 people. And that included children. So the opportunity to lead and direct the children's ministry was really, it was from the ground up. It was working from the ground up. So there was really nothing there. And I had to come in and create something. So for me, it was, serve every single Sunday in the classroom. And it was start to be able to recognize potential leaders and to be able to call them up and to come alongside me to help build the team. So that looked like team leaders. So putting a team leader over every classroom. And so in that process, it was really serving alongside the people that I was pulling up to lead. So to me, I hope that answers your question, but I think that when we do the work alongside our people, we learn so much. Like I'm more of a proponent that I don't ever personally, and the Lord may tell me to do something different one day, but like I don't want to ever lead something I've never done and been involved, served in some capacity, because there's something to being in the trenches and understanding what it takes to be able to get the ball across the finish line and to be able to lead those people. So to me, in children's ministry, it was being in the classroom with them. It was, being the director of children's ministry, but being in a classroom and being a helper, and allowing a teacher to teach and to take the lead and the reins in a classroom. So to me, I built so much relationship with people as I was doing that. And you build relationship, you can build trust. And that's a huge part of servant leadership, in my opinion. If you are leading with the right heart posture and you are in the trenches with your people, you are building relationship and building trust with them. And trust is such an important part of leadership. So
Yeah, and I totally, yes, more than answered. Thank you. I think when we think about that idea of trust, for me, that is definitely an indicator of whether or not we're leading with a servant's heart. If the feedback we're getting from our folks is, man, there's a challenge with trusting, believing what I'm saying to them. There's a challenge with trusting that I have their best interest at heart. Those are places where, man, could it be that there's just something off? Definitely. Or could it be that I'm leading in a way that isn't promoting trust, that isn't helping our team members believe that I am in it with them, not just simply there to give them orders, tell them what to do, but in the trenches with them, and being able to model that while at the same time holding the tension of caring for the overarching ministry. So I think when we think about that idea, we had a few questions that we were going to jump into, and I think that they will also kind of highlight the work that we're doing. One of the things that you mentioned is, hey, there wasn't, we've talked about this at length, there wasn't a school that we got to go to. There wasn't this place where we got to kind of get the academic learning and then create practical application. It kind of all happened at the same time. And the hope is that you can tread water really well and just keep coming back to the table, making room for more. So when you think about that, what are some intentional ways, because we have to come back to, we talk about the overarching thought, but coming back to the practical, we mentioned some of the things like, man, being in the work with them, but are there any other ways you intentionally look to build a strong servant leadership culture?
Yes. I would say always being available, always being available, always being approachable, always being a safe place for people to be able to come and be completely honest where they are and what they're struggling with. I think that our people need to know we always have time for them, that they're never a burden to us, that we understand that that's part of our role as their leaders, is to be there for them and to meet them where they are. I think if we're not meeting with our people on a regular basis and creating a space where they can come and be completely transparent and honest on where they are, what the struggles are, like we want to celebrate wins as well. And but I think it's imperative that we make ourselves available and people know that the door is always open.
Come on. I love it. One of the things we often talk about is whether or not I'm a proactive or a reactive leader. Man, a reactive leader says, hey, there's a problem, I need to address it. What happened? Let's sit down, let's talk. And while you can get things done that way, I often find that it feels like you're chasing your tail, like you're playing that old carnival game, whack-a-mole, where you're just constantly trying to hit the next problem down, and the minute you hit one, another one pops up. but living on the other side of it and going, how can I be a proactive leader? How can I begin to ask the questions and put the statements out there that allow the natural narrative? Anyone who's done this for long enough, someone has said to you, oh, I didn't come to you because you looked really busy. You had too much going on. I didn't want to burden you with another thing. I knew you were running all over the place and I didn't want to stop you. You were with purpose and it felt like what I had to say wasn't important. So we have this natural narrative that we have to fight against, and being proactive in that, being able to find those spaces where we're routinely meeting, routinely checking in, giving opportunity for those conversations. And I think even in our replies, one of the things that I've adopted is that when someone comes to me and they says, hey, I know you're really busy, but I just want to, before they even get there, I go, you're right, I am busy, but I'm never too busy to sit down and to talk with you and to hear what's on your heart. So allowing us to recognize the reality of the situation. Anyone in this role is busy, and we're busy all the time. And to pretend like that's not the case now feels like we are placating and or minimizing what the person's saying, but embracing the truth and going, you know what, that is true, but I still have time for you. So I love that. I love making space for our teams, and for any of our doers on listening, making space and talking often feels like you aren't getting anything done. But fighting against that narrative and recognizing that you are taking a proactive stance to problem solving, you're deepening your well of trust with that person. And I believe it's many times it's multi-layered. If I have that trust, if I have that relationship, correction becomes easier, support becomes easier, them coming with hard conversations to me before they're a problem becomes easier. So it is that proactive work that really does help to make the soil so much softer to plow, so much easier to work through. So I love it.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that you said that. You know, it's interesting when we're leading people in a church setting. Typically, we are leading our friends, and that can be a tough thing to navigate. Oh, it's so hard. And I'm a relational leader, so like I prefer it that way, even though it's harder, and even though when you have to have those harder conversations, you have to speak into something that you know isn't maybe going to be received well or enjoyed. If you have that relational equity with your people, if you have spent the time and done the hard work in the little things, in the day-to-day things, building relationship and building trust with them, then it is easier to be able to speak into those things. And I think sometimes a practical thing that I've had to do is to say, okay, I'm taking my friend hat off and I'm putting my boss / work hat on. So can we have a conversation now that's, we know we're friends. We're going to set that down for a second and we're going to talk about this. And I've found that if you have that trust and you have that relational equity with them, it goes so much better because they have a respect. And I have a respect. It's a mutual respect because we're serving alongside of each other. We're walking in relationship with each other and we're trying to be humble about it. I think about in Philippians, it talks about don't do anything with selfish ambition or conceit, but with humility, always count others better than yourself. And that's servant leadership, in my opinion. It's putting others before yourself.
Come on. I love it. So you mentioned the part just about hats. Often we wear so many different hats. I think it's such a favor and a courtesy to the person that you're talking to help them discern and understand how you're coming to them. And we definitely use that language here. And I think it not only helps in my conversations, but I've seen my team start adopting it as well. And being able to have that moment before the conversation starts just helps to set expectations and to set, okay, what relationship are we working in? And to your point, recognizing that, especially within the church environment, it's so multi-layered. And often we can be talking to literal family, not just, hey, we are family in faith, but I'm talking to my brother, I'm talking to my husband, my wife, and we're in positions of leadership over one another. It can get really, really layered in a lot of different ways. So taking those moments to talk about the context of the conversation and how we're engaging, I think are so important. So
Yeah.
I hear in the underneath of it so much wisdom in just the sharing, and it would hopefully help me feel so much better if by chance you didn't learn all of this through just discernment and figuring it out. So as we talk about that, any resources you would recommend, any places where someone goes, hey, I know that's something I need to learn, that's something I need to grow in. Are there any resources, any things you've used to kind of help bring that process along and add language to the work that you're doing?
Well, obviously the Bible, I think in obviously, so, and we've kind of talked about that, but I know you talk about this a lot too. The Craig Groeschel podcast is just it's a mining field. Like you can just get nugget after nugget after nugget after nugget from that podcast. And so that's something that I am a regular participant in the Craig Groeschel podcast. I think he does a great job of bringing on different people and different experiences. And so I'm always able to pull from that as well. And somebody he just had on recently is Dr. John Chasteen, and he has written a book called Re-Leader. And I have been listening to that podcast, catching up on it. And I have the book. I just haven't got to read it yet because it's sitting in the 5 other books I'm supposed to be reading right now. So, so I think to me, and this is just me, and I may be the norm, I may not be, I don't know. But reading books is like I said, I have 5 books that literally I'm supposed to be reading right now. Or when I say I'm supposed to be, I have one that I'm supposed to be, and I make sure I get that chapter read before we have our staff devotional. But the rest of them are, oh, yes, I need that. Oh, yeah, that sounds like what I need. And then I buy it, and then I put it on top of the other one that I just did that with. And so it's so hard. So for me, podcasts are such a blessing because I can take Silas to school and drop him off. And when I'm driving into work, I can put that podcast on. And when I'm driving to the grocery store, I'm, all the things I'm trying to balance. Podcasts are such a great, so even the fact that you're doing this again is just, it's so needed.
Yes, I'm with you. I have my stacks of books here as well. And I have the books that I'm supposed to be reading. And then I have the books that I want to read. And then I have the books that I have to read. All of them in different areas, security and management, finances. It's like there are all of these things that we have to have just enough knowledge in to be dangerous. And I agree, trying to prioritize those things is so much fun. And I definitely recommend the Craig Groeschel podcast as well. And always add these disclaimers in. We are not paid. We are not endorsed by any of those folks. It's because we truly believe in the content. Another thing that I'll put out there, and just so folks know, and I always say this, anything that we mention in our time together will be linked in the notes of our YouTube, Facebook, and on our podcast. So if you're going, man, what was the podcast? Where did it come from? Definitely check out the notes and you'll be able to click on the links. And I will try my best to actually post the episode that Kendra's talking about. He also releases the first Thursday of every month, almost like we do in the same fashion. So there's always great new content. One of the other things that I would mention as well, podcasts are huge, and anything you can do to help take your reading from the page to making it mobile is huge. I actually use an app called Speechify, and it scans pages of text and generates audio content on the other side. So even for my books, I'm able to scan the PDF pages of it, and it will create an audio book on the other side for me, even for books that don't have audio recording. There is a price component to it for a yearly basis, but I watch my little counter and I have almost doubled my reading in a year's time because I'm able to grab that 20-minute drive to the office I'm able to use that 5-10 minute drive from dropping off the kids at school, picking them up. Those spaces now become time that I can use to enrich rather than simply just needing to get to and from a location. So we're almost to time. It's been great content. One last thing that I just want to ask you as we jump into the last little bit, as you think about that starting place for you as a leader, that starting place for you as you stepped into the roles that you're in, if you had the 20-something-year-old version, I know that's only like 5 years ago, but you have that person there in front of you, man, what would you say to them if you had, man, I can give you these couple of words of advice. What do you think that would be good for that Kendra to hear?
Man, I think be humble. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't feel like you have to know everything today. And surround yourself with people who know more than you do. Trustworthy people who know more than you do. And listen to them. Know that they have experience that you don't have, and that they are willing and able to walk alongside you. I know you had Pastor Mike on a few episodes ago. That man is gold.
Yeah,
I'm so for the Mike Cantrells in this world. People who are able to look at somebody and see potential and pour into them and encourage them and call things out in them. He's done that in my life. And so find people that you can walk alongside that can do that in your life. I think it's imperative.
Oh, come on. So true. So true. I agree. Pastor Mike is an amazing man of God and has definitely influenced my leadership and my walk as well. So, man, Kendra, thank you so much for your time coming on the podcast. I really do believe our time is going to hopefully speak to and encourage folks that are in this role. We even said it in our pre-conversation, just in getting ready for the podcast. What we do can be a really lonely and isolating place. And if you take nothing else from our time, from this podcast, please hear that you are not alone, that you have people who are excited for the work that you're doing. You have people who need the work that you are doing, to be encouraged and to surround yourself with those people who are going to call you up, who are going to see things in you that you don't see yourself, who you can trust with the hard days, the hard times, and know that they're going to encourage you, clean you up, man, dust off those scars, put you back in the game. So thank you all for listening with us today. Hopefully the time, like I said, has been encouraging for you. And always to remember, man, your amount of resources do not speak for you, but how you use them says everything. Every day, you're given the tools that you need, but we just have to have the eyes to see them. It is possible. It is possible to do the impossible with less. So remember, like, share wherever you pursue the content. Give us your feedback. We want to continue to cultivate material that's going to be helpful, insightful. So if you've got, hey, we'd love to hear this topic covered, please share. We'd love to do that. Thank you guys for your time. Be encouraged.